Hello, I'm Farnaz Jahanbakhsh, currently a postdoc at Stanford. This is joint work between me and my PhD advisor, Professor David Karger at MIT CSAIL. It is well known that the spread of online misinformation has had a big impact on people's lives. And the way things are now, the onus of fighting misinformation has largely fallen on social media platforms, because these platforms are a major source of the online misinformation that people come across. This approach is far from ideal for many reasons. One is that it puts a critical social decision in the hands of for-profit companies, and that limits users' autonomy in deciding who they trust to declare what is accurate. And second, having the platforms in charge does nothing to fight the misinformation that users come across off the social platforms. Rather than pursuing a centralized approach towards fighting misinformation, which would entail designating a central authority as the arbiter of the truth, in prior work, I have advocated for empowering users to have a more active role in fighting misinformation. One way to bring about this empowerment is by building certain design affordances into social media platforms. These affordances include enabling all users to assess the accuracy of content and then to capture those assessments as part of the data model, and enabling users to specify which other sources and users they trust to assess content. In a paper that was published in CSCW 22, I built a social media platform called TrustNet that was like any other, except that it offered the affordances of user-generated assessments and specified trusted sources. Through a field study of the platform, I showed that users like having these affordances and the autonomy to help their friends and be helped out by them. Our Chi 24 paper builds on that work and deals with its practicality. We showed before that these affordances can work, but then we thought, how do we move forward from here? We have this research social media platform that users were unlikely to migrate to from all the other social spaces that they use now, especially without a critical mass of their network and their friends migrating with them. We could call on social media platforms to incorporate these affordances, but that would be unlikely to happen without activism or legislation. And the reason is because platforms may be worried that changing the user experience drastically, especially giving too much control over content to their users, can potentially impact their revenues. Also, it's true that social media platforms have been an important outlet for the spread of misinformation, but they are far from being the only one. If we concentrate all our efforts on getting platforms to moderate content, we are neglecting the fact that users consume content by choice or by accident outside these platforms as well. For example, they may come across links to unverified or misinforming content on a news or a media website or in an email newsletter or on a news aggregator. It is unrealistic to expect that every website or platform on the web, some of the very perpetrators of misinformation, offer content moderation and in a fair and rigorous way at that. And here enters this work. This is a case study of how enabling users to moderate content can be deployed everywhere on the web, in a platform-agnostic manner and without support from the social platforms or individual websites. We designed and built a browser extension called the TrustNet extension that lets anyone access any content, including news articles, YouTube videos, tweets, and so on, anywhere on the web, and also lets each user independently decide whose assessment they trust. So how does this help? When a user is on a web page, the extension checks the URL to see if its associated content has been assessed by those that the user trusts. If there are such assessments for the page, a side pane that contains assessments pops open automatically. And as you see, the color of the pane helps the user determine at a glance whether the page has been assessed as accurate or inaccurate, or if the assessors have split opinion. The same pane also shows inquiries about the accuracy of the content from others that either trust the user who is visiting the page or have specifically asked that their question be relayed to the user. The user can use the same pane to submit their own assessment of the page, update their previous assessment, or ask about the accuracy of the content. A big advantage of using URLs to bind assessments to content and then find assessments of content is that they are universal. Any resource on the web, including news articles and social media posts, and even the comments, YouTube videos, etc., has a unique URL. And so using the extension, the user can see the content's assessments by their social circle when navigating to the content's URL. But here's the catch. Many of these resources are usually embedded into a feed, think social media posts, or they are shown as links on an aggregator page, think the front page of a news website. And we know from prior work that links are often not clicked even when they are shared, so showing the assessments of a web page only when the user navigates to the page will not benefit those many users who don't visit the page. So to address this issue, the extension also checks the links on the page that the user is reading and places an icon that indicates the accuracy status of the link's associated resource next to each link. We additionally made the design decision to reduce the salience of links assessed as inaccurate by making them look faded. Effectively, we introduced a design friction as a disincentive, a small hurdle that users would need to overcome to read the content. But users can still consume the content if they want to, since the content is still where it would otherwise be and is visible. Here's a compilation of a set of YouTube videos that our field study participants assessed using the TrustNet extension. I've marked all these participants as my trusted sources for the purpose of this demo, so that they can see their assessments on the pages that they visit. Some videos, like the one that is playing now, have been assessed as accurate, and you can see the green check mark next to them. This one here has both the inaccurate and accurate icons next to it, which means that the assessors don't seem to agree on its accuracy. And the video that is faded here has been assessed as inaccurate. Now, a complication of finding assessments of outgoing links on a page is that we can't just look up these links as we find them on the page to see if we have any assessments associated with them in store. The reason is that these links often go through multiple redirections before finally redirecting to the link from which the resource can be fetched. There are different reasons for this. For example, some websites may want to know what links you click on to exit the page by. So first they take you to an intermediary web page. In the system, we have a whole architecture in place to deal with this complication. The job of the architecture, in a nutshell, is to follow the trail of redirects to fetch the ultimate resource that the link is pointing to, while minimizing the delay. You can read about all that in the paper. We wanted to see how users would interact with this tool and how they would perceive it. So we did a field study of the tool where we had 32 users use the extension for 2 weeks to assess any piece of content that they wanted in the wild. We have a detailed discussion of the results in the paper, but here I'll just be taking you through a tour of some of the high-level results. Oftentimes when accuracy assessments are mentioned, the image that is invoked for many of what it would look like would be assessments of political content or medical. But what we saw was that our users used the extension to assess a variety of different content, not only limited to political, but also on a variety of other topics such as science and engineering, home improvement, entertainment and celebrity gossip, and so on. What was interesting was that even in our small-scale study, the distribution of the types of content people considered important to assess varied across individuals, and that the distribution was also different from what is typically fact-checked by professional fact-checkers. This is expected because in the existing fact-checking model on today's web, the power to assess content is confined to a limited set of individuals and initiatives who simply don't have the resources to cover every piece of content published by every source. Also, depending on the topic, users wanted viewpoints and assessments from others than professional fact-checkers alone. For example, on issues related to foreign affairs, they wanted to see assessments of journalists from other countries and immigrants. On health-related topics, some wanted viewpoints from patients as well, in addition to medical professionals. All of these points support the argument that there is a need for decentralized approaches to content moderation. We also wanted to see what criteria users would use for assessing content, to see if regular people can indeed assess content effectively. In the paper, we present a taxonomy of rationales that our users used, which I encourage you to check out. One criteria, for instance, was that the content distinguishes between facts and opinion. So even if it is just a theory or an opinion, it is presented as such. These criteria can be built into tools to capture users' assessments of content credibility in structured form, to, for instance, help with filtering. The paper contains lots more. We discuss in detail the implications of our tool and our study for the design of tools that, in a similar way, give more agency to the users and democratize content moderation on the web without support from the online platforms. We talk about broader social implications and potential adverse effects, such as echo chambers and how to design against those, and so on. I invite you to check out the paper to learn more.